Warlordism had its legacies. And among those legacies are the two Chinese governments that remain in power today. The nationalist government, or the national government, which once ruled the mainland and now rules Taiwan, and the Chinese Communist Party, which has ruled the mainland since 1949. Both began, like warlord armies, as regional movements, strongly tied to a single military leader. And both knew that effective military strength was the only way to gain power, and an essential, though not sufficient, means of keeping it. Under both governments, ultimate power would lie not in the civilian government, not even in the party itself, but in the government and party military commissions. If you want to know who is in charge in China from the 1920s to the present, you need to know who is chairman of the military commission. Both would gear Chinese industry to the process of military strengthening. And from the 1920s through to the 1970s and 80s, the growth of industry and the strengthening of military are essentially inseparable as one sees the growth of a Chinese national security economy. And both would try to overcome the greatest weakness of the warlord period, a time when the military seemed to exist for itself, feeding off the people, and try to link the military to broader conceptions of what the role of the army would be in a modernizing China. For this, however, they had rather different models. From 1927 to 1937, the national government itself was obsessed with matters military, against enemies domestic, real ones, the communists, and anticipated enemies, the Japanese. One of the main ways by which the national government chose to exercise its power, and Chiang Kai-shek in particular, was that of continued emphasis on military power. He was trained as a military man in Japan, and he saw politics to a considerable degree in military terms. He spent 50% of his budget on the military, and the industrial development that occurred during his rule was geared primarily for military purposes, for a state-controlled national defense economy. With his German advisors, he had the aim of creating an elite world-class force on a Prussian model, first to dominate regional warlords, second to exterminate the communists, and third to defend China from its international enemies. The army also was to be a model of modern discipline, a model for a modern Chinese citizenry to emulate. It would be the school of the nation that, in Chiang Kai-shek's view at least, was in need of discipline. Xunzi said, "The people are the water and the ruler is the boat." The water can support the boat, but it can also sink it. Chiang Kai-shek sought to avoid this possibility, it seems, by remaining on land and keeping his army as separate from the people as possible, a purely professional army. Perhaps this was one of his larger mistakes, for Chinese society remained on the local level highly militarized and violent, and open for organization. Compare Mao Zedong, who took Xunzi a step further by immersing his army among the people. As he put it, the soldiers are the fish, and the people the water. Now we must be fair. By the early 1930s, any Chinese government would have been forced to do much of what Chiang Kai-shek did. Japan had seized Manchuria in 1931, and it looked like it sought more Chinese territory.
On the Korean-Manchurian border, an entire Japanese army was assembled, conveniently equipped for a winter campaign. All they needed was an excuse.
All priorities became militarized, not just political ones, but also economic. For the building of a world-class military demanded an independent arms industry, demanded a railway network and air transport to be planned as part of a national defense economy. And in so doing, China had some very significant short-term successes. Chiang Kai-shek's armies proved better than those of any local militarists. His German-trained army beat the Chinese communists once again in 1934 and led them on the famous Long March, which was in fact a devastatingly long retreat. But Chiang Kai-shek's army was important to him and others as the school of the people, as an exemplar of moral conduct, both in its demeanor and in its loyalty to him personally, to the leader, the Zongzai, the Yuanshou. Jiang's greatest effort to use the army as teacher of the nation came in what he called his New Life movement of 1934. This was an attempt to rally the people and indeed to militarize the morals of the people, arguing that the ancient values of Confucianism, and in this he went much further in manipulating Confucian symbols than Yuan Shikai had, were in line with the military values of the day. As Chiang Kai-shek said, the Confucian values of propriety, justice, integrity, and a sense of shame were the secret of the greatest of China's ancient kingdoms. And, he said, they were the primary cause of the strength of present-day Italy and Germany.